Hi everyone. In this video I want to talk about doing personal retreats. You can think of them as time by yourself or as time where you will learn something. It can be religious, it could be non-religious, you can be an atheist or a Buddhist or a Christian or a Hindu or a Jew. Um, Whatever your belief system may be, everyone I believe can benefit from retreats. So I have done a lot of retreats and I like to categorize them as personal spiritual retreats. So I may be referring to retreats in that way. I'll Maybe I'll get to talking about why I choose to call them spiritual in this video, or maybe I won't. But um, there are different kinds of retreats out there. Some of the retreats you will be by yourself. You might find a place somewhere in the forest. Maybe you'll rent a cabin somewhere, and you'll have a few days by yourself. You'll read a book. You'll relax. Maybe you'll go for a walk on a trail. Take a hot bath, listen to some music. So that's great. That's one type of retreat. Another type is maybe where you will go on a group retreat and there will be a leader and you will be taking part in group activities and you will learn some method of meditation, possibly maybe yoga, or maybe you will pray together, maybe you will have some discussion time, maybe you will listen to discourse by the teacher, or you will have some kind of group activities. So depending on the retreat that you attend. The kind that I have done myself, I like to go on silent retreats, meaning I have a lot of opportunity to focus inwards and spend time by myself. So by myself doesn't necessarily mean that I'm the only one there. It just means that I can put my attention on myself. That's why silence can be important. The type of retreats that I've done most frequently have probably been the 10-day silent Vipassana meditation retreats. This is the Vipassana term has been used to describe these 10-day silent meditation retreats taught by Mr. S.N Goengka. And these retreats are all over the world. They're run on donation, there's no fee. You hand over your phone, you will learn a technique of paying attention to your breathing and to your body, and you will be in silence for the majority of 10 days. And it's a gradual process. It's not easy to just kind of become silent inside your head. It takes time. So the idea with those retreats is that day after day you will kind of get more in it and you'll build momentum, and somewhere through in the retreat you'll actually start to get into deeper states of meditation. You're also not going to read on these retreats. It's just silent and paying attention to your breath and body. Of course, there's a whole philosophy surrounding it, and you will be guided through these meditations. Then there are other kinds of retreats that I've done, like personal retreats, where like when I went to India or Nepal. I'm thinking if I did something like that in Korea. Um, well, in India and Nepal, I rented a house, and um, I had an arrangement where the owner of the house actually was really kind, and they would cook for me. And I basically ended up just doing a self-retreat. So I was by myself the whole day, and I would meditate. I might have read a little something time to time. Did some walking and a lot of just contemplating, reflecting, thinking about life, thinking, processing all of the thoughts, emotions, feelings that were relevant to me at that time. And I did a different duration. I remember, I think I did a 7 day in Dharamsala in India, then I did another 7 or 9 days in Nepal, in Lumbini. Then I did close to a month in the mountains of Kathmandu. So then, so this is more of a like a personal retreat. Then there are other retreats um, where you would be a guest at a monastery, and they're also personal retreats, but there are other people there. So, for example, I spent some time at a Russian Orthodox monastery in Northern California called St.Herman of Alaska. There, it's part of the Christian tradition to mm, welcome pilgrims, and usually they have a place for guests to spend some time, and the guests will often join the monks or the nuns in the worship, and there'll be time to do some reading and maybe helping around the monastery with some work. But really, it's mainly time for reflection and um, it's just contemplation on life. I find it to be a really meaningful experience, and that experience, in particular, when I spent time at St. Herman of Alaska in Northern California, that was really really incredible. Actually, I just it was not too it was about a year after I'd come back from Myanmar after having spent a year as a Buddhist monk, and so now I was at this Russian Orthodox Christian monastery, and I'm really grateful that they were so kind and hospitable to me, because it really gave me the opportunity to, for the first time, I would say, to actually understand some of the Christian theology in a deeper way. I mean, I was familiar with it for many years, but for the first time, it actually started to make sense and become personal. So then there are another retreat I did was in Kentucky, and so I live in Kentucky. I live in Louisville, Kentucky, and there's Gethsemany Abbey. It's famous for Thomas Merton. He wrote many books about interfaith. He compared different religions, and I guess you could say there's a ecumenical philosophy that he had, the idea that all religions have some common unifying truth, and so he traveled many places and wrote books. Anyway, so he's from that monastery, and they are open to people from different religions, different traditions, and they have a guest house where people are welcome to come and stay, and they have a library you can go and read. They have a meditation room. I don't remember if they call it meditation room or a yoga room, but basically, and they have food, of course. It's also free of charge, based on donation completely. So there are many places like these all over the world. And sometimes I've been asked, how do you find a retreat? I want to take a retreat. People a lot of times are just have no idea that these resources are available to them, and most likely just in your town. You don't have to go to California, or you don't have to come to Kentucky, or go to India or Nepal. I also didn't know that this was actually much easier to find than I thought a few years ago. But actually, it's quite easy. It's not as easy to find the good ones. So, how to start? Let's see. How would I recommend you find a good retreat? Well, I have a personal opinion about that, and some people might not like me saying this, especially if they are in the retreat business. But I am of the opinion that one very important indicator of whether or not a retreat is worth attending is their business model, or their basically, do they charge money or do they run on donation? I believe strongly that if it's a spiritual retreat, offer some sort of like refuge for people to find inner peace, then to charge money would be a conflict of interest. They would be trying to please you in ways that might actually be very superficial and not help you in a deeper way to address maybe some important aspects of your life. So if you go online and you look at and you find a retreat, go to their like sign up page and just look at what their look at if they charge for their services. If there's any fee, if there's like a suggested donation, I would stay away from it. One of the things that also happens when these places have a set fee for a retreat is it creates a kind of elitist structure. Basically, it's not for everybody. It's only for the people who can afford it. And when it comes to spiritual practice or trying to help people, that seems kind of ironic that you would choose the people who can afford it only. I mean, what about the people that can't afford it? Do they not deserve to have a spiritual retreat? And a lot of times these retreats, the ones that charge money, are ridiculously expensive in my opinion. So that's really a big indicator. And if you look for some of the best places are really the traditional places. It'll be maybe a traditional Buddhist monastery, or it'll be a traditional Catholic monastery, and I would really recommend going there with an open mind. I know that these days there's a kind of tendency to reject religion and traditional beliefs. There's also a lot of people who think that you know they believe in science and that religion is in conflict with rational mind. I don't agree with that opinion, that perspective. I believe that there is a place for religious dogma, and of course it's up to you to understand it, and there's a reason for why some tradition or religions or traditions really try to be, let's say, orthodox or strict about their dogma. And I mean, one of the reason for that is because when you start to break the boundaries of tradition, things can get really messy, and it can become quite complicated to communicate with each other, actually. In the long term, yes, I think it may be, maybe people will learn to communicate and um, broaden their vocabulary and be able to understand the language of different religions. But it's not always easy. But I do think that for us or people, for many, let's say the millennial generation and maybe slightly older and definitely the younger generations, it's important going into these retreats with an open mind and maybe consider giving something a second chance. Don't just reject it, because yeah, a lot of the dogma appears to be dogmatic because it is a part of a system that has been built up over centuries or even millennia, and the terminology within the dogma only makes sense within that system. So if you come out of that system and you start throwing out using the language in different contexts, things get really confusing. So let's see, what else? Some other important topics to bring up regarding retreats. Keep an open mind. Go with be ready to learn. Retreats are really the time to reflect. They're the time to learn. If you're gonna do a personal retreat, you may be reading and reflecting. Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot more questions that you might want to ask me, and I would be happy to give you some references of places to check out. So just I guess message me or comment on the video, and I really hope that you take the chance and do a retreat somewhere. Find a nice place that works for you, and let me know if you have some questions that I could answer.